Developing Algorithms with Arrays Part 3. In this video, we will discuss how to determine properties of an array. Consider the following program where I declare an array of strings containing the words you see before you. Now consider this scenario. Suppose I want to determine if at least one string in the array begins with a lowercase b. Now obviously, we as humans can simply look at the screen and tell if this is true or not, but as you know, computers don't work that way. Computers have to be instructed on how to determine this property, and the way we instruct them is through a program. So, how would that program look? The first step would be to declare a Boolean variable. We're going to name it found, and we're going to use this Boolean to store the result of our procedure. When all is said and done, if we were able to find at least one word that starts with a lowercase b, then this variable will equal true. If we were not able to find any, then this variable will be equal to false. For now, however, we're going to start by assuming false. Anytime you're asked to determine if at least one value in an array contains a specific property, always start by assuming false and then wait to be proven wrong. Next, we're going to set up our for loop. Because our goal is to look at every single value in the array, we're going to start by initializing I to 0. We're going to increment it until it reaches the length, and we're going to increment it by 1 every single time. Then inside our for loop is where we're going to test each value one by one. So the first thing we want to do inside our for loop is pull out the first character of the string at that location. So what we're going to do is we're going to declare a char variable. I'm going to name it ch, and we're going to use this char to store the first letter for each word that we're looking at. Okay. So how do we pull out the first letter in a word? We do that by going to the word located at index I, then calling the char@at method with a 0 as the parameter. We call words I.char@0. This gives us the letter, the character at index 0 of the word at index I, or in other words, the first letter. We store that in ch. Then we need to determine, all right, does this character equal lowercase b? We do that with an if statement. We state if ch is equal to lowercase b. Notice that we use the double equal sign to compare the two values. Now, if this is true, then that means we found a word that begins with the lowercase b. Thus, we've satisfied our property. Thus, we can set the found Boolean equal to true because we now know that, hey, we satisfied the property. Nothing else needs to be done. And for that reason, we can also break from the for loop. Once again, we break from the for loop because once we find at least one value that begins with the lowercase b, there's no need to check any more values. We've already proven the property to be true. Thus, it's okay to exit the for loop as soon as you find it. Then that would complete our if statement and our for loop. Once the for loop is complete, all that's left to do is to print out the final value of the Boolean variable, and it'll let us know whether our property was true or false about the array. So let's illustrate the behavior of our for loop on our array. Once again, we start at I equals 0. We pull out the first character, check to see if it's equal to b. If not, so nothing happens. We go to I equals 1, pull out the first character, store it in ch, check to see if it's equal to lowercase b. It's not, so nothing happens. Next, I equals 2. We pull out the first character, store it in ch, check to see if it's equal to lowercase b. It's not, so nothing happens. Next, I equals 3. We pull out the first character, store it in ch, check to see if it's equal to lowercase b. It's not, so nothing happens. Next, I equals 4. Pull out the first character, store it in ch, check to see if it equals lowercase b. It does. In this case, the condition is true, so we're going to set the found variable equal to true, and then we're going to break from the for loop. We're done with the for loop. We're not going to check I equals 5. We don't need to because we've already found at least one value that begins with lowercase b. So we exit the for loop. We then skip to the print statement. We print out the value of found. True gets output to the screen. Something to note about this scenario is that had not a single word in this array began with the lowercase b, then the if condition would have never evaluated to true, and thus the Boolean variable found could have never been set to true. Thus false would have been output since that was the initial value that we gave it. Scenario 2. Suppose I want to determine if all strings in the array have a length of 3. This scenario differs from the first scenario that we discussed in one important way. For the first scenario, we needed something to be true for just one element in order for the final output to be true. For this scenario, we need something to be true for all elements in order for our final output to be true. For this reason, the steps that we're going to follow are going to be very similar to the steps we followed for the first scenario, but with a couple small changes. Okay? Once again, we're going to declare a Boolean named found that's going to store our final result. Okay? But now, instead of assuming false, we're going to start by assuming true. We're going to assume true and then wait to be proven false, if that is the case. Then we're going to set up our for loop the same way we did for scenario 1, because once again, our goal is to look at each value in the array. We don't need a char variable for this scenario because we're not looking at one character at a time. We're evaluating the string as a whole. So we don't need a char variable. We're just going to go straight to our if statement, where we're going to use a slightly different approach with our condition. For scenario 1, we tested each value in the array to see if a specific property was true. For this scenario, we're going to test each variable to see if a specific property is false. In other words, we're going to say if the length of the word is not 3. Here, we're looking to see if the word at index I does not contain a certain property. Whereas for the first scenario, we were looking to see if the word at index I contained a certain property. So, if the length of the word at index I does not equal 3, then we're going to set the found variable equal to false, okay? Because we just found a value in our array that makes our final property false. And since it only takes one value being false to set our final output to be false, it's okay to break from the for loop. There's no need to check any other values from this point out. Since our goal was to determine if all words in the array had a length of 3, once we find one whose length is not 3, we're done. We don't need to check anything else. We've completed. After that, all that's left to do is to print out the final value of our Boolean variable. So let's demonstrate the behavior of our for loop on the array. We start with I equal to 0. We check to see, is the length equal to 3? Yes, it is, which meaning the if condition will be false, so nothing happens. I equals 1. Is the length not equal to 3? It is, so once again, the condition is false, nothing happens. I equals 2. Is the length not equal to 3? Yes, it is, so nothing happens. I equals 3. Is the length of the word not equal to 3? Yes, it is, so nothing happens. I equals 4. Is the length of the word equal to 3? Yes, it is, so nothing happens. I equals 5. Is the length of the word not equal to 3? Yes, it is, so once again, nothing happens, and we've reached the end of our for loop. Because our if condition was false for each value in the array, we never entered inside the if statement. Thus, the Boolean variable found never got changed. Thus, when we print it out at the end, the value true gets output to the screen.